Imagine being laughed at by the entire village, the girl you loved calling you a poor nobody, and everyone believing your life would end in failure. Now imagine returning years later in a convoy of luxury cars, richer than the people who mocked you, powerful enough to change the entire village forever. But when the same woman who once rejected you falls to her knees begging for forgiveness, what would you do? This is the powerful story of a poor boy who turned humiliation into greatness, and the moment that changed everyone's life. Before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay till the end, because this story has a twist you won't forget. In a quiet village called Umuaka, surrounded by farms and dusty roads, lived a young man named Samuel. Samuel was known by everyone in the village. Not because he was rich, but because he was hardworking and kind. Every morning before sunrise, Samuel would wake up to help his mother on their small farm. After his father died 5 years earlier, Samuel became the man of the house. His mother, Mama Grace, was getting older and weaker, and his younger brother David was still in school. Samuel worked in the farm, carried firewood to the market, and sometimes helped villagers repair fences or roofs just to earn a little money. Their house was small and old, with cracked walls and a leaking roof during the rainy season. But Samuel never complained. One evening as they ate a simple meal of gari and soup, his mother looked at him with concern. "Samuel," she said softly, "you work too hard. You are still young. You should also think about your own life." Samuel smiled gently. "Mama, my life is right here. As long as you and David are okay, I am happy." David laughed. "Brother, when I become a big engineer, I will build you the biggest house in this village." Samuel laughed too. "I will hold you to that promise." But there was something Samuel had never told them. For many years, he had secretly loved Amora. Amora was the daughter of Chief Okafor, the richest man in Umuaka village. Their house was the biggest in the village, surrounded by tall walls and a large iron gate. Amora was very beautiful. She wore expensive clothes, drove in her father's car, and everyone treated her like a princess. Many young men in the village wanted to marry her. But Samuel loved her quietly from a distance. They had grown up in the same village, and when they were children, they sometimes played together near the river. But as they grew older, their lives became very different. Samuel was poor. Amora was rich. Samuel's friend Peter once warned him. "Samuel, forget that girl," Peter said one afternoon as they rested under a mango tree. "Her father will never allow it." Samuel looked down at the dusty ground. "I know," he said quietly, "but my heart refuses to listen." Peter shook his head. "Just be careful. Rich people don't see people like us the same way." For many years Samuel kept his feelings inside. But one day, something changed. That afternoon, the village square was busy. Traders were selling food, women were gossiping, and children were running around. Samuel saw Amora standing with her friends near the market stall. She was laughing loudly. His heart started beating fast. "Today," he thought, "I will finally tell her." Peter saw the nervous look on his face. "Samuel, what are you planning?" he asked. Samuel took a deep breath. "I am going to talk to her." Peter's eyes widened. "Are you serious? Here? In front of everyone?" Samuel nodded. "I cannot keep this in my heart anymore." Before Peter could stop him, Samuel walked toward Amora. People nearby began to notice. Amora looked surprised when she saw him. "Samuel," she said, raising an eyebrow. "What do you want?" Samuel's hands trembled slightly. "Amora, I came to speak with you." Her friends exchanged amused glances. "Speak about what?" she asked impatiently. Samuel swallowed. "I know I am not rich," he began slowly, "but I have loved you for many years. I am hardworking and determined. If you give me a chance, I promise I will build a good life for us." For a moment, everything became quiet. Then suddenly, Amora burst into laughter. Not a kind laugh. A loud, mocking laugh. Her friends joined her. "Samuel," she said loudly so everyone could hear, "have you looked at yourself?" The crowd began paying attention now. She pointed at his worn shirt and dusty sandals. "You think I would marry a poor farmer like you?" Some people in the crowd started laughing. Samuel felt his face burn with shame. But Amora was not finished. "You have no house, no car, no money," she continued cruelly. "What can you give me?" "Poverty." Her friends laughed again. One of them whispered loudly, "Maybe he wants Amora to help him escape poverty." More laughter. Samuel's chest felt tight. But he forced himself to speak. "I may be poor today," he said quietly, "but I will not always remain poor." Amora rolled her eyes. "Oh please," she said. "Men like you always say that. But you will never become anything." Her words hit Samuel like a stone. "You are dreaming too big," she added coldly. "Go back to your farm and stay where you belong." The crowd burst into laughter again. Samuel stood there for a moment, his heart shattered. Then he slowly turned and walked away. Behind him he could still hear the laughter. That night, Samuel sat outside his small house staring at the dark sky. His mother came and sat beside him. "Samuel," she said gently, "what is wrong?" For a long time he said nothing. Then he whispered quietly, "Mama, I cannot stay in this village anymore." She looked at him in surprise. "Why?" Samuel clenched his fists. "Because one day I will prove them wrong." 2 days later, before sunrise, Samuel left the village. He carried a small bag with only a few clothes, some food, and the little money he had saved. His mother hugged him tightly. "Please be careful in the city," she said with tears in her eyes. "I will, Mama," Samuel replied. "I promise I will come back successful." David held his brother's arm. "Don't forget us." Samuel smiled. "Never." After a long journey, Samuel finally arrived in the city. The city was nothing like the village. Cars were everywhere. People rushed past each other without even saying hello. Tall buildings covered the sky. For the first time, Samuel felt very small. He spent the first night sleeping on a wooden bench at a motor park. The next morning he began searching for work. He went from shop to shop. "Please sir, do you have any work?" he asked. Most people ignored him. Some simply said no. By afternoon he was hungry and tired. Finally, a shop owner said, "You can help carry bags for customers." The pay was very small, but Samuel accepted. For weeks he did different small jobs. Cleaning. Carrying loads. Washing cars. Life in the city was hard. One rainy night, something terrible happened. Samuel was walking back to the motor park where he slept. Suddenly 2 men stopped him. "Give us your money," one of them said. "I don't have much," Samuel pleaded. They pushed him to the ground and took everything he had. When they left, Samuel sat in the mud, exhausted and hopeless. For the first time since leaving the village, he almost cried. Maybe Peter was right, he whispered to himself. Maybe I cannot succeed here. But then he remembered Amora's voice. "You will never become anything." Samuel slowly stood up. He wiped the rain from his face. "No," he said firmly. "I will prove you wrong." And somewhere nearby, an old man watching from a distance had just noticed Samuel's determination. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet. Samuel stood under a weak streetlight, his clothes dirty and his small bag now empty. The robbers had taken the little money he had saved. For a moment he felt completely lost. Then he remembered his promise to his mother. "I cannot give up now," he whispered to himself. Just then, he noticed an elderly man standing near a parked car across the street. The man had been watching him quietly for some time. The man walked closer. "Young man," he said calmly, "are you all right?" Samuel quickly wiped his face and nodded. "Yes, sir. I am fine." The old man studied him carefully. "You do not look fine," he replied. "What happened?" Samuel hesitated, but the man's voice sounded kind. "I was robbed," Samuel said honestly. "They took the little money I had." The man sighed. "This city can be very cruel." Samuel nodded. "Yes, sir. But I will not give up." The old man raised an eyebrow. "Oh, even after being robbed?" Samuel straightened his shoulders. "Yes, sir. I came here to change my life. I cannot go back home as a failure." The old man smiled slightly. "What is your name?" "Samuel, sir." "Well, Samuel, I am Mr. Okeke. Samuel recognized the name immediately. Many people in the city knew about Mr. Okeke. He was a powerful businessman who owned several companies. Samuel quickly bowed his head respectfully. It is nice to meet you, sir. Mr. Okeke looked thoughtful for a moment. Tell me something, he said. What kind of work do you do? I will do any honest work, Samuel replied. Right now I carry goods for people at the market. Mr. Okeke nodded slowly. Hard work is good, he said. But honesty is even more important. Then he suddenly pointed to a black leather bag sitting on the ground near his car. Samuel, he said, can you please bring that bag for me? Samuel walked over and picked it up. The bag felt heavy. As he handed it to the old man, it accidentally opened slightly. Samuel saw something that shocked him. The bag was full of money. Bundles of cash. His heart started beating faster. For a moment, a dangerous thought crossed his mind. If I take just one bundle, nobody will know. But he immediately pushed the thought away. Samuel quickly closed the bag and handed it to Mr. Okeke. Here you go, sir. Mr. Okeke looked at him carefully. You opened the bag, he said. Samuel nodded nervously. Yes, sir. It opened by accident. And you saw what was inside? Yes, sir. Mr. Okeke leaned closer. You know that money could change your life. Samuel remained silent for a moment. Then he said something that surprised the old man. Maybe it could, sir. But it would not be the right way. Mr. Okeke stared at him. Why do you say that? Samuel spoke calmly. My father always told me something before he died. What did he say? Mr. Okeke asked. Samuel replied softly. He said, a man who builds his life with stolen bricks will always live in a house that can collapse. Mr. Okeke suddenly laughed. It was a deep, pleased laugh. Very interesting, he said. Samuel looked confused. Sir. Mr. Okeke closed the bag and placed it in the car. Samuel, he said, that was a test. A test? Samuel asked. Yes, Mr. Okeke replied. I have been watching you. Samuel blinked in surprise. You have? For several days, the old man continued. I saw you working at the market. I noticed that you always worked harder than the others. Samuel did not know what to say. Mr. Okeke continued. But tonight, I wanted to know something more important. What is that, sir? I wanted to know if you were honest. Samuel's eyes widened slightly. Mr. Okeke smiled. And now I have my answer. The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. He handed it to Samuel. This is my office address, he said. Samuel looked down at the card in disbelief. Sir, why are you giving me this? Mr. Okeke looked at him seriously. Because tomorrow morning, I want you to come and work for me. Samuel froze. For you? Yes, Mr. Okeke replied calmly. You will start with a simple job. Nothing fancy. But if you work hard, your life can change. Samuel felt his chest fill with emotion. Sir, thank you, he said quietly. Mr. Okeke nodded. Do not thank me yet. You still have a lot to prove. Then he got into his car. Before the car drove away, he rolled down the window. Oh, and Samuel, he said. Yes, sir? Do not be late tomorrow. For the first time since arriving in the city, Samuel smiled. The next morning, Samuel woke up before sunrise. He washed his face at a public tap and cleaned his clothes as best as he could. He did not want to disappoint Mr. Okeke. When Samuel arrived at the office building, he stopped and stared. The building was huge. Glass walls. Security guards. People in expensive suits walking in and out. Samuel felt nervous. Do I really belong here? He wondered. A security guard stopped him at the entrance. Where are you going? Samuel showed the card. I came to see Mr. Okeke. The guard looked surprised but allowed him in. Inside the building, Samuel felt even more out of place. Everything was clean and bright. Finally, a receptionist spoke to him. Are you Samuel? She asked. Yes. Mr. Okeke is expecting you. Samuel was led to a large office. When he entered, Mr. Okeke looked up from his desk. "You are early," the old man said with a smile. Samuel bowed his head slightly. "I did not want to be late, sir." Mr. Okeke nodded approvingly. "Good." He stood up. "Samuel, I will start you as my office assistant." Samuel blinked. "What will I be doing, sir?" "Small tasks," Mr. Okeke replied. "Deliver documents, organize files, observe how things work." Samuel nodded. "I will do my best." And he did. Samuel worked harder than anyone else. He arrived early. He left late. While other workers went home to relax, Samuel stayed behind learning everything he could. Sometimes he asked questions. "Sir," he once asked Mr. Okeke, "how do businesses grow so big?" Mr. Okeke smiled. "Discipline, patience, and smart decisions." Samuel remembered every word. At night, Samuel borrowed books from a small library. Books about business. Books about leadership. Books about success. Slowly, Samuel began to change. His confidence grew. His knowledge increased. And Mr. Okeke noticed. One evening, after 2 years had passed, Mr. Okeke called him into the office. "Samuel," he said, "sit down." Samuel obeyed. "You have learned a lot," Mr. Okeke continued. "Thank you, sir." The old man opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the desk. "Samuel," he said calmly, "it is time for the next step." Samuel looked confused. "What do you mean, sir?" Mr. Okeke pushed the envelope toward him. "Inside that envelope is 5 million naira." Samuel's eyes widened in shock. "Sir, what?" Mr. Okeke smiled. "It is not a gift." Samuel listened carefully. "It is a loan," Mr. Okeke explained. "Use it to start your own business." Samuel could barely speak. "You believe in me that much?" Mr. Okeke leaned back in his chair. "Yes," he said. Then he added something that Samuel would never forget. "Because great men are not born in comfort. They are built in struggle." Samuel stared at the envelope on the desk. 5 million naira. His hands trembled slightly as he picked it up. "Sir, this is too much," he said quietly. Mr. Okeke smiled. "No, Samuel," he replied calmly. "This is not too much. It is an opportunity." Samuel looked worried. "What if I fail?" Mr. Okeke leaned forward. "Everyone fails at some point. The question is not whether you fail. The question is whether you learn and rise again." Samuel nodded slowly. "I will not disappoint you, sir." Mr. Okeke chuckled. "You already said that 2 years ago. Now it is time to prove it again." Samuel spent several weeks planning his business carefully. He remembered all the things he had learned while working with Mr. Okeke. After thinking deeply, he decided to start a logistics and delivery company. The city was growing fast, and many businesses needed reliable transportation for goods. Samuel used part of the money to rent a small office and buy an old delivery truck. It was not fancy. The paint was fading and the engine made strange noises sometimes. But it was his. The first few months were very difficult. Many companies refused to work with him. "You are too small," one manager told him. Another said, "We already have bigger companies handling our deliveries." Samuel refused to give up. Every morning he visited different businesses, introducing himself. "My name is Samuel," he would say politely. "I run a delivery company. I promise to deliver goods safely and on time." Most people ignored him. Some laughed. One afternoon, a businessman looked at him and said mockingly, "Young man, do you know how many delivery companies exist in this city?" Samuel nodded. "Yes, sir." "Then why should I choose yours?" Samuel answered simply, "Because I will treat your business like my own." The man stared at him for a moment but still shook his head. "Sorry. I need experience." Weeks passed. Samuel's savings started running low. One evening he sat alone in his tiny office staring at his accounts. "If this continues," he murmured, "I might lose everything." Just then his phone rang. "Hello." A voice spoke on the other side. Is this Samuel Logistics? Yes. This is Mr. Bello from Prime Electronics. I heard about your company from someone. Samuel sat up quickly. Yes, sir. How can I help? We need a company to deliver goods to our stores across the city, Mr. Bello explained. Our previous delivery company has been very unreliable. Samuel's heart began racing. We would like to test your service for 1 month, Mr. Bello continued. Samuel could hardly believe it. Yes, sir. I promise you will not regret it. And he meant every word. Samuel personally supervised every delivery. Sometimes he even drove the truck himself. He made sure every package arrived safely and on time. At the end of the month, Mr. Bello called him again. Samuel, he said, I have never seen such dedication. Samuel smiled nervously. Thank you, sir. I am giving your company a 2-year contract. Samuel nearly dropped the phone. Within months, Samuel's business began to grow. He bought a second truck. Then a third. Soon he hired drivers and office staff. Word spread that Samuel's company was reliable and honest. More clients came. Within 5 years, Samuel owned a fleet of trucks and several warehouses. The young man who once slept at a motor park was now becoming one of the fastest rising businessmen in the city. But Samuel never forgot where he came from. Sometimes at night, sitting in his office, he remembered the village. And he remembered Amora's words. You will never become anything. Samuel would simply smile. While Samuel's life was rising in the city, things were changing in his old village. Amora's life had taken a very different path. After rejecting Samuel years earlier, she continued waiting for a wealthy husband. Many men came to ask for her hand in marriage. But she rejected most of them. This one is not rich enough, she would tell her friends. My husband must be powerful. One day a man named Chief Adeyemi arrived in the village. He drove an expensive car and wore flashy jewelry. People said he owned businesses in several cities. Chief Okafor was impressed. This is the kind of man my daughter deserves, he said proudly. Amora was also excited. Chief Adeyemi showered her with expensive gifts. Designer clothes. Gold necklaces. A brand new phone. Within months they were married in a grand wedding ceremony. The entire village attended. Music played. People danced all night. Amora felt proud as she sat beside her wealthy husband. You see, she whispered to her friends. I told you I would marry a rich man. But the truth about Chief Adeyemi slowly began to appear. Behind closed doors, he was very different. He was arrogant and short-tempered. He often returned home late at night smelling of alcohol. One evening Amora asked him gently, Where have you been? Chief Adeyemi frowned. Do not question me. Another shocking truth appeared soon after. Amora discovered that her husband already had 2 other wives in different cities. When she confronted him, he laughed. You should be grateful, he said coldly. Many women want my attention. Amora felt humiliated but stayed silent. She did not want to return to the village in shame. Then things became worse. Chief Adeyemi's businesses began collapsing. It turned out that many of his companies were built on loans and debts. Creditors began coming to the house demanding money. Soon the expensive cars disappeared. Then the house was sold. The luxury lifestyle vanished. Amora now struggled to buy food. One night she cried quietly. How did my life become like this? She whispered. But the worst moment came one morning. Amora woke up and noticed something strange. Her husband's wardrobe was empty. His suitcase was gone. Chief Adeyemi had disappeared. He had run away, leaving behind debts and problems. Amora collapsed onto the floor in shock. I have nothing, she cried. With nowhere else to go, she returned to her father's house in the village. But even there, things had changed. Chief Okafor had lost much of his wealth due to bad investments. The large compound was no longer lively. Many servants had left. When Amora arrived, people barely recognized her. She looked tired and thin. Her once beautiful clothes were now simple and worn. One afternoon she sat quietly outside the old compound. Her mother joined her. Life has been cruel to you, my daughter, her mother said sadly. Amora stared at the dusty road. Maybe I deserved it. Her mother looked surprised. Why do you say that? Amora's voice was heavy with regret. Because I once rejected a good man simply because he was poor. Her mother frowned. Who? Amora whispered the name she had not spoken for years. Samuel. Her mother sighed. I remember that boy. He was hardworking. Amora nodded slowly. Yes, he was. She looked toward the road again. I wonder what became of him. Little did she know that far away in the city, Samuel's name was already becoming known in the world of business. And soon, the entire village would hear about him again. 7 years had passed since Samuel left the village of Umuaka. During those years, his life had changed in ways no one in the village could imagine. His logistics company had grown into a powerful business. He now owned several warehouses, a large fleet of trucks, and partnerships with major companies across the country. Newspapers sometimes wrote about him as one of the fastest rising young entrepreneurs. But even with all his success, Samuel never forgot his home. One morning in his large office, his assistant walked in. Sir, the plans for the village project are ready. Samuel looked up from his desk. Good, he said calmly. It's time. A few days later, news spread quickly through Umuaka village. A wealthy businessman was coming to visit. People were curious. Who could it be? One woman asked at the market. Maybe a politician, another guessed. The village elders decided to organize a welcome gathering in the village square. On the day of the visit, everyone gathered early. Children ran around excitedly. Women prepared food. Men arranged chairs under large canopies. Around midday, the sound of engines filled the air. Several black SUVs drove slowly into the village. Dust rose as the vehicles stopped in the square. The villagers stared in amazement. They had never seen cars like these before. Security guards stepped out first. Then the door of the main car opened. A tall man wearing a sharp suit and dark sunglasses stepped out. For a moment, nobody recognized him. Then an old man standing near the front squinted his eyes. It was Papa Nadi, the oldest man in the village. He stepped forward slowly with his walking stick. The man in the suit removed his sunglasses and smiled. Papa Nadi gasped. Samuel. The crowd went silent. Yes, Papa, Samuel said respectfully. It is me. Suddenly the entire village erupted in shock. Samuel? The farmer's son? People whispered and stared in disbelief. The same young man who once wore torn clothes was now standing before them dressed like a powerful businessman. Samuel walked forward and greeted the elders respectfully. It is good to be home. Papa Nadi shook his head in amazement. My son, when you left this village you had nothing. Samuel smiled humbly. I still remember those days, Papa. Soon everyone gathered to hear Samuel speak. He stood in front of the crowd and spoke clearly. My people, he began, this village raised me. Even when I had nothing, this soil fed me and these people shaped my life. The villagers listened carefully. I did not return to show off my success, Samuel continued. I returned because I want to give back. The crowd murmured with curiosity. Samuel raised his hand. I will build a modern secondary school for our children. People gasped. Also, I will build a health clinic so our people do not have to travel far for treatment. Women began clapping. And finally, Samuel added, I will build a water system so every home can have clean water. The village exploded with excitement. People cheered and celebrated. The boy they once mocked had returned as the man who would change their lives. But among the crowd, someone stood quietly at the back. It was Amora. Her heart was pounding. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. The same Samuel she had laughed at years ago was now standing before the entire village like a king. Tears filled her eyes. How did this happen? She whispered to herself. That evening, the village was still buzzing with excitement. Everyone was talking about Samuel. Did you see the cars? He is richer than the chief. Samuel has become a great man, but inside her small room, Amora sat alone in silence. Her mind was filled with memories. She remembered the day in the village square when Samuel had confessed his love. She remembered the cruel words she had spoken. You will never become anything. Now those words felt like knives in her heart. Tears rolled down her face. I was so foolish, she whispered. Later that night, she made a difficult decision. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and quietly left her house. She walked through the dark village roads until she reached the large house Samuel had rented for his stay. Her hands trembled as she knocked on the door. A moment later, the door opened. Samuel stood there. For a moment they simply stared at each other. Samuel's expression was calm. Amora, he said quietly. Her legs suddenly felt weak. Without thinking, she dropped to her knees. Samuel, please forgive me. Samuel looked surprised. She began to cry. I was cruel to you, she said through tears. I humiliated you in front of everyone. Samuel said nothing. Amora continued speaking. I judged you because you were poor. I thought money was everything. She wiped her tears. But the man I married destroyed my life. Samuel listened quietly. He lied about his wealth, she continued. He treated me badly and eventually ran away, leaving me with nothing. Her voice broke. And every day I remember how I treated you. She looked up at him. I am not asking you to love me. I am not asking you to take me back. She lowered her head again. I only came to ask for your forgiveness. For a long moment, Samuel remained silent. The painful memory of that day in the village square returned to him. He remembered the laughter. He remembered the humiliation. But he also remembered something else. The struggles that made him stronger. Finally, Samuel spoke. Amora, stand up. She hesitated. Please, he said gently. Slowly, she stood. Samuel looked at her calmly. Yes, you hurt me deeply, he admitted. Amora closed her eyes in shame. But I forgave you a long time ago, Samuel continued. Her eyes opened in surprise. You forgave me? Samuel nodded. Because holding on to anger would only destroy me. Tears rolled down Amora's face again. I don't deserve your kindness. Samuel sighed softly. Maybe not, he said honestly. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to her. Amora looked confused. What is this? Money, Samuel said. She stared at him in shock. Use it to start a small business. Her hands trembled. After everything I did to you, why would you help me? Samuel looked toward the quiet village road. Because someone once helped me when I had nothing. He looked back at her. And I refuse to become the kind of person who forgets where he came from. Amora clutched the envelope tightly and began to cry again. But this time, her tears carried something different. Not just regret, but hope. The next morning, the village of Umuaka was alive with excitement. People were still talking about Samuel's return. At the market, women gathered around their stalls discussing the news. Samuel has changed the destiny of this village, one woman said. Yes, another replied. Who would have thought the poor farmer's son would become so successful? But while the villagers celebrated, Samuel was already busy planning. Inside the temporary office he had set up in the village, he sat with several engineers and project managers from the city. Large papers were spread across the table. These are the building plans for the school, one engineer explained. Samuel studied the drawings carefully. How long will construction take? He asked. About 8 months if everything goes smoothly, the engineer replied. Samuel nodded. Good. The children of this village deserve a better future. Outside, a group of curious villagers gathered near the building, whispering among themselves. One of them said quietly, Samuel is not just rich, he is wise. Meanwhile, across the village, Amora sat in a small shop building that had been empty for years. The envelope Samuel gave her lay on the wooden table. She slowly opened it again. Inside was more money than she had ever held in her life. Her hands trembled. I cannot waste this chance, she whispered to herself. After thinking carefully, Amora decided to open a small food supply store. The village had only a few small shops, and many people still traveled far to buy basic supplies. She cleaned the old shop building herself. She swept the floors. She repaired broken shelves. Day by day, she slowly rebuilt her confidence. At first, many villagers were surprised. "Amora is working in a shop," someone asked. "Life has humbled her," another replied. But Amora did not care what people said anymore. She focused on working hard. One afternoon, Samuel walked past the small shop while visiting one of the construction sites. He noticed Amora arranging bags of rice on a shelf. She looked up and froze when she saw him. For a moment, she felt embarrassed. But Samuel simply smiled. "How is the business going?" Amora managed a small smile. "It's growing slowly. That's how every business begins," Samuel said. She hesitated before speaking again. "I want to thank you, not just for the money." Samuel looked curious. "For giving me a second chance," she finished quietly. Samuel nodded gently. "Just make sure you use it well." Later that evening, the village elders invited Samuel to a meeting. They gathered under the large tree in the center of the village. Papa Nadi spoke first. "My son," the old man said proudly, "what you are doing for this village is beyond anything we expected." Samuel shook his head humbly. "I am only giving back to the place that raised me." Another elder leaned forward. "But we must ask you something important." Samuel looked at them. "What is it?" The elder smiled. "Our village needs strong leadership." Samuel frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Papa Nadi spoke again. "We want you to become the new community development leader." Samuel was surprised. "Me?" "Yes," the elder replied. "You have knowledge, wisdom, and a heart that cares for the people." Samuel thought quietly for a moment. Finally he said, "If it will help the village grow, I will accept." The elders smiled with satisfaction. At that moment, Samuel understood something important. Success was not only about wealth. It was about impact. And his greatest achievement would not be the trucks, warehouses, or money he had earned. It would be the lives he helped change. 1 year later, Umuaka village looked completely different. The new secondary school stood proudly near the entrance of the village. Its bright classrooms were filled with children eager to learn. Nearby, the health clinic welcomed patients every day, giving villagers access to proper medical care for the first time in many years. And the clean water system had transformed daily life. Women no longer needed to walk long distances to fetch water. The entire village had begun to prosper. One afternoon, a large celebration was organized to officially open the new school. People gathered from neighboring villages to witness the event. Children wore their new school uniforms proudly. The village elders sat in the front row. Samuel stood at the stage, looking at the crowd. As he held the microphone, memories filled his mind. The day he left the village with nothing. The night he was robbed in the city. The moment Mr. Okeke gave him a chance. Samuel smiled softly. "Today is not about me," he began. "This school belongs to the children of this village." The crowd applauded. Samuel continued speaking. "When I left this village years ago, many people believed my life would lead nowhere. Some villagers lowered their heads in embarrassment. But every challenge I faced made me stronger," Samuel said calmly. "And every person who helped me along the way reminded me that kindness can change lives." After the speech, the children performed songs and dances. The atmosphere was joyful. Nearby, Amora watched quietly from the side. Her small shop had grown into a successful local store. She now employed 2 young girls from the village. She had rebuilt her life step by step. As she watched Samuel surrounded by villagers thanking him, she felt a mixture of pride and humility. Later that evening, she approached him again. "Samuel." He turned and smiled politely. "Yes. I just wanted to say something." Samuel waited patiently. "You didn't just change the village," she said softly. "You changed me." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes our mistakes teach us the most important lessons." Amora smiled faintly. "You are a very different man from the boy I once knew." Samuel looked toward the new school building. "Maybe," he said. "But that boy is the reason this man exists." As the sun slowly set behind the hills of Umuaka, the village glowed with new hope. And Samuel's story became something people would tell for generations. Not the story of a poor boy who became rich, but the story of a humble man who never forgot where he came from. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that success is not where you start but the choices you make, then don't forget to like this video, thumbs up sign, subscribe to the channel bell, and share it with someone who needs a little motivation today. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Samuel? Your story might inspire someone else.